Everybody, welcome to BraveMaker's Mastermind. So glad that you're here today. This is session 28, and it is the 2nd of December, 2024. So we've been doing this for 28 weeks. This is really cool. Creative Mastermind is existing to professionally develop people in the industry and also provide a support group on a weekly basis on Monday. So happy December to you all. Glad that you're here. Before we bring in our special guest, let me just bring your attention to a couple things. As a perk to being a member of this community, you get free mixers. If you're in the Bay Area, we're going to start figuring out how we can do some more virtual mixers for those of you who are in LA and other places. But you have a free ticket to our December 18th holiday mixer, which is in Redwood City. So if you are getting our emails, you should have the code for that. BraveMaker.com/events will give you all the information about that at 6:30 to 9 p.m. December 18th. Anybody who's watching on the replay, remember you can engage in all of these mixers or all of these webinars that we do virtually too. So when you meet our special guest Franco today, you can follow up, you can email him, you can connect. All of these things are really important to make sure you're engaging, getting the most out of your connection and your membership here. We also have a couple spaces left for our BraveMaker Sundance trip. So if you are going, your deposits and payments are due. So please pay up so we can pay our Airbnb fees. That's January 22nd to the 27th. If you would like to go, there are still a few spots left in shared rooms. Let me know. I can give you more details and costs. And then let me bring up Olga, who is our marketing and communication and press director over here, who's been doing some really amazing things with Mastermind, so she can tell you what's coming up. Thanks, Olga. Hi.
Hello, Tony. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for the warm welcome and welcome again to Mastermind on Monday. I'm not in my DJ mode. I'm just having too much coffee. But guys, as you know, we have been doing some interesting and fun things with our memberships, as well as creating packages and promotions for those who are not local, or maybe people who want to just check it out and see what's going on every Monday at 10 a.m. PST. For this reason, we have created this portal where people can order these recordings one by one as a la carte sort of product, or they can buy a whole package of these recordings to learn and to connect and to really drive the most of their creative spirits. And because it's Black Friday last week and it's Cyber Monday today, we're not e-commerce company, but we're living in 2024, almost 2025. For this reason, we have created this portal where people can buy individual recordings. They can also buy a whole package. And the link is in the chat if anyone wants to check it out, as well as share with your creative friends, because it's all about giving. You know, Thanksgiving, it's all about giving. It doesn't have to be one day a year. It's all about sharing and caring. And maybe you have someone who's going to learn this or would love to check us out. So please share this link with your community and have them check it out as well. Maybe they want to buy it as a gift for holidays for someone else. It's only $100 for 14 amazing recordings from this year since June 2024. And the price will go up tomorrow because Tony is kind. He would give it out for free to everyone, but we're also a nonprofit, so we need to make a living. So that's why, that's the only reason. But it's really $100 for amazing information until tomorrow, until midnight tonight. So if you want to check it out and give it to someone else, please do. And I'll give it back to Tony. Thanks, all.
Thank you, Olga. Honestly, give it up for Olga. She has done so much of this behind the scenes, administrating and creating. It really helps us. And remember, this is all to help sustain the film festival that we do every July, right? So if you hear us talk about these things, you know, I don't like to be peddling, you know, and begging for money, but it's more like this is what we're creating value and we're trying to create space. And hopefully you are all benefiting from this as a member of the membership community in BraveMaker. I know some of you have gotten jobs and made connections and been on sets because of this community. And as we bring in Franco today, you are able to make connections in LA and hopefully move your career forward. So that's a really exciting thing. So thank you, Olga, for doing that. And with no further ado, let's bring up Franco. Franco, I'm going to be like Italian for a second. Franco Sama, who is from Samaco Films. He is a producer, executive producer, a consultant. He's doing all sorts of things, getting financing and helping people get their films off the ground. And I love that, you know, every week we have different guest speakers. And the whole goal is, again, if you're watching this on the replay for session 28, it's so that you can make connections. Like we are building our network here. So Franco, welcome to the BraveMaker Mastermind. Why don't you tell people a little bit, like how do you describe your work and what you do? You do classes as well. You're always mingling and connecting people and helping people see their visions come to life from the financial perspective. So let's hear more about it. You have to unmute as well.
Sorry, I didn't know was I on mute?
Yeah.
Oh, I apologize. So
You're
thank
good.
you, Tony. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I guess the best way, oh my God, to describe what I do is, I mean, I have come to realize I've been doing this for 27 years, and I've come to realize that I was born to do this.
Mhm.
I was born to be a producer. And the interesting thing is that I always knew when I was like a young kid that I wanted to be in this business, but I didn't know what that looked like. And I certainly didn't know anything about it. And it took me a really long time. I didn't get here until I was 40 years old. And that was in 1997. So you do the math.
Do the math, baby. 43.
Yeah. So anyway, it took me a while to figure it all out, but once I got my first couple of films off of the ground and kind of got the hang of it, basically, and started doing things like going to AFM and all of the typical things that we do as filmmakers, I started to really understand the business from a different perspective because at 40 years old, I came from Boston, and I had a lot of what I call transferable skills, right? I didn't know anything about the movie business. I didn't know anything about TV. I didn't know about any of that. But I knew about people, and I knew how to I was a consultant back then. So I knew how to work with people. And in fact, at one point, I had a friend who was an artist, and he was so good that I opened up an art gallery. I never told you that, Tony, but I actually opened up an art gallery in Boston because he was so good, and the thing took off. It's another story for another day, but that was when I realized, oh, so there are a lot of creative people out there with all this talent, and they have often they're afraid of the money side, like they don't want to go there, and then somebody like me comes along who's the flip of that, and all of a sudden you got a really viable partnership, right? And it worked. It was great. He's still he's a huge artist now, and I'm very very proud of it. But anyway, once I figured out that there was a job that encapsulated all of my favorite things to do and my skill sets, that was when I made my shift. So for the first 3 years I was in LA, 97 to 2000, I was a publicist. And that was my way in the door. I got to work with some of the greats. I got to work with Francis Ford Coppola, Gary Oldman, Will and Jada. I had a time in my life. Now, remember, I just got here. And so I broke out of the gate. And but the thing that hit me once I did, turn the page and start getting into the executive producer role of this, is I was looking at it from a different perspective, I think, than most people, because I was an entrepreneur and I was from another planet, right? So I was looking at it from an aerial view, kind of, and being able to say, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. This whole, I wrote a script and I need $2 million, and the process, there was no process. There was no process to get that money. And what I found was it was actually the opposite. It was kind of like the system worked against us in a way, right? Because everybody's running around asking everybody else for things that nobody has. And it just didn't make any sense to me as a businessman and as an entrepreneur. So I thought, there's got to be, like, the studio does it. The studio has a system. It's called the studio system for a reason, right? And what about us? We don't have that. So because I'm a Libra, which everything has to be like perfectly balanced. In fact, my birthday is 10/10, so it's like I can't even I can't even. I'm the guy that if I go in your house and there's a picture on the wall that's a little crooked, I'll go fix it because I can't even look at it. So I'm always looking for that balance in my life, right? And so I thought, why don't I just create my own system? Like, why don't I just figure this out on my own? I can do that. And I did. I put together a system. And during that time, I got a bunch of movies made by virtue of going through this particular process. Now, at the beginning, this was very primitive, right? Because I was still figuring it out for myself. But what would happen, and you saw just some images of me like speaking rooms. By the way, that was the VIP Film Summit in Washington, D.C. I was the keynote speaker 2 years in a row there. I've traveled all around the world, by the way, to do this, to speak to filmmakers and educate them. Because that's where the problem was, right? Is that nobody knew how to do it. And the film schools aren't going to teach you that stuff because they don't want you to know how hard it is to raise $2 million. Right? So, we're all left to our own devices from them. That's Will and Jada's house, by the way.
Oh, fancy.
Grace Jones at Will and Jada had a Easter party. And it's one of my favorite pictures. And that's my friend Lynn Shea, by the way. I don't know if you know her, but she's an amazing actress. So anyway, I did figure it out, right? I finally figured it out. I made a couple of movies very successfully. And then what started to happen was everyday, filmmakers would come up to me and, ask me to explain how I did it. And after like 10 times of that, I was like, you know what? It's going to be a lot easier if I
pay me for this.
Well, it wasn't even that because I wasn't charging back then. I was like, why don't I just put like 20 people in a room and say it once instead of saying it 10 times individually? So I rented a little coffee shop down on Fairfax. In the back, they had like a little room where they do karaoke or whatever, right? And it held about 40, 45 people. And I posted one ad on Facebook, and it was free, a free, seminar, basically. It was 3 hours long. And I got up there. In those days, I had the big white paper with the magic markers. I wasn't as sophisticated enough to have a PowerPoint. And I taught this class, and I taught people basically how I did what I did. And it was great because I was making all kinds of relationships and meeting all these wonderful filmmakers and supporting them, doing whatever I could. In the meantime, those classes got to be so big that I had to start renting much bigger rooms. Let's put it that way. And now I got 100 people or I got 150 people. And it was still really cool and exciting, and it was still free, except there was a VIP ticket that you could buy that got you a few extra goodies. But for the most part, anybody who wanted to could come in and for free. And what would happen is at the end of those sessions, people would come up to me and start handing me their scripts and their DVDs and their packets and their music. And I would leave there with like this box full of stuff. And I quickly realized, like, what am I supposed to do with all this stuff? Like, I can't do all these things. I can't work on all these projects. And that's when I realized what I would need to do is turn this into a business.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it hit me. Like, this is an opportunity for them. It's an opportunity for me. Let me figure out how to, I've done it 100 times in my life. That's what I do. So I turned it into a business. And what I did was I refined that course, that course, and which I now teach. I teach it as a 6-week one-on-one private one-on-one like this, Zoom class. And what's so cool about it, I was telling Tony last time we spoke, I have a woman that just signed up from Ukraine. Like, I'm teaching filmmakers from all around the world because of Zoom. And it's fascinating for me. It's just so much fun to be able to explore the world, and just sit here in this chair. But anyway, so yeah, I designed the class so that because even the people who I actually do films with and I work with, they still need the class. Because if I'm helping you get a film financed and we're working together and you don't understand the language, you're going to be lost. And that's not going to look good on any of us. Right.
So can you talk about that a little bit? So it sounds like, the business side is really your wheelhouse and helping people know how to be business people who are also filmmakers, like the film entrepreneur, which I think, is that what Alex Ferrari says, film entrepreneur? Yeah. So what are some of those things that you're teaching people in your classes that you're doing yourself personally? Because you're raising, and you just met, you were telling me yesterday, you just met, Jeremy Piven.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't just met him, but I did go to his screening, and it was here at the DGA of his new movie, which is fantastic. Like, by far one of the best films I've seen in a very long time. And the irony was, and that this was not planned, but I happen to have this shirt on, my logo shirt, and it was the only thing that was clean. So I just threw it on and I ran out the door. So he noticed it, and he just kind of took a double take and started asking me questions, and one thing led to another. And now I'm working with him to try to help him. Yeah, there it is. Oh, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Here it is. And it really is a spectacular film. And I'm working with him with my international distribution people. And I am working with him on raising some like P&A money to do the some of the marketing and that kind of thing. And that's the kind of stuff that happens to me all the time. I if you guys are familiar with the PG, that's my husband, by the way, with Jeremy. If you're familiar with the PGA, the Producers Guild of America, I am also the chair of the events committee there. That was another thing that was interesting to Jeremy, because we have 6,000 members in LA and 2,600 in New York, and that's an audience he wants to tap.
And we're also talking to Franco about our July Film Festival coming up to do some things with us in person. So this is an exciting, cool partnership. Yeah,
I would love it. So just to kind of go back to your original question, in terms of the way it works, I call myself the bookends. And the reason I say that is because I usually come in at the beginning, and I really don't want to come in at the beginning. If I come into a project, that's been around for a while, or it starts got layers and it's got attachments and it's way harder for me to help, because a lot of filmmakers are just kind of going by instinct, right? That's why I teach the class. They're going on instinct, and their instincts might be spot on, but it's not going to get them any money, right? Creatively, it might be a great choice, but if I'm gonna cast so and so in my lead, right, is that gonna buy me any sales in anywhere. For example, I did a movie with Gary Oldman, and when I got involved, Christian Slater was the lead, and he was really perfect for the lead. But we couldn't get the attention of the international market when it came to money. Now, let me tell you, most of these independent films, if they're going to succeed and make money, you have to have some kind of a international revenue. And if there's nobody in these movies that anybody in those countries ever heard of before, it's a really tough sell, especially with distributors. So if you have a name actor, and we talk about how you do that, like a Jeremy Piven, for example, you'll get the sales in those countries. And we actually do that. Like, we actually go get those sales and like bring that money back. So I have an expression, it's my catchphrase. I've been using it forever. I say, when it comes to getting a movie, independent movie financed, by the way, I'm in the like $1 to $6 million range. So that's my sweet spot. And so the catchphrase is that getting the money isn't the hard part. That getting the money back is the hard part. All right. So, you can't go talk to an investor and say, hey, I need $2 million, and then not have a plan on how you're going to make $4. Right. You gotta have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't promise anything, you can't guarantee. I mean, it is an investment, it is a film, and it could go, either way. You could spend, as you guys have seen, I'm sure, you could spend $1 million on a movie and have it make 100 million, right? And you can spend 100 million and have it make it 10. So there's no like magic formula around this thing. That's the PGA. That's my co-chair, by the way, that young lady. She's my co-chair on these events. We're having one coming up on December 10th. So if you're a PGA member, make sure you come. And so anyway, yeah, I was saying that when you get to that point where you want to go get money, you better be ready, because you got one shot at this. And the number one mistake that most filmmakers make, in my view, including myself before I knew better, is going out too soon.
What do you mean going out too soon before you have the plan?
They're going out too soon for actors and too soon for money. They're not ready. They're not ready. They're not prepared. And the key to the success, I had 3 movies come out last year, 2023, right? 2 of them went into theaters. They all went through my development system. The key, what makes that work, is the months that we spend properly developing that project, so that before we put it in front of an investor, it's bulletproof.
Mm-hmm.
We have all the answers. And then I personally sit in on those meetings, and I will negotiate with you don't have to,
Yeah.
I will negotiate on your behalf to get those investors to put up the funds so that we can go to work and make a movie. I just got back from Puerto Rico not too long ago. Somebody hired me to go there for a week just to close his investors. He had a bunch of investors that lived on the island. So I serve a lot of different functions, but I have a philosophy that I really, really stand by, which is you have to put in the time, money, effort to do the development. Like, so if you're going to go raise money for a movie, raise the development money first so that you can develop it properly, so that then, you can go out and now you're in a position where, especially if it's your first time, now you're in a position where you have the right to ask an investor for $1 million because you've done all of the hard work. Now, in many of these cases, and most of them, but I got a movie starting tomorrow. Sorry. Yeah. Start shooting tomorrow. In most of these cases, the filmmakers, once I put all that packaging together and we have a cast and we have a director and we have all the pieces and the money's in the bank, then they go make the movie. So I'm not that kind of filmmaker, right? I'm not on set, every day for 2 months. I'm not. I'm here. But they're there and we're entrusting them to do their job. And, everybody understands what's at stake because we're using other people's money. And then when they finish right around post-production time, I come back in. That's why I call it the bookends. And I help them get through post, make sure that their trailer works, because you have to be able to sell the movie off the trailer initially before they even look at the film. I work with them closely on that. And then I get involved in the marketing and the PR. And then I work with the distributors and cut the deals and negotiate the contract. So I'm with the film for the whole time. The only thing I'm not doing is literally making the movie.
Mm-hmm. You got creative producers on the ground. You have the director. All those things are happening.
Everybody.
You're
Yeah, and it's
truly the executive producer in that sense, which, for a lot of us on this call, we are those people, the organic on the ground makers who want to be on the set, want to be taking the idea and the script and bringing it to life. We've got people who have directed and are in the process of directing features and stuff, which is really, really exciting. So we'll definitely open it up for questions here in a second. And if you're watching on the replay and you're not live, you can still obviously get in touch with Franco here. And in the chat, there's a ton of links that I'm putting in there so you can follow up. But Franco, for those who are watching on the replay and not live, we'll make sure we have your email so that they can, follow up with you. And I know you also do a consult. You have a free 30-minute consult that people can book with you to talk about if their project is right for you. So again, if you're watching on the replay or obviously live here, make sure you go to his website, which is in the chat, and it's Samaco Films, SAMACO films.com. You can get all this information there. But what I like hearing you say. You
can also contact me through the site too.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I'll give you my direct email so that you can.
Yeah. Contact him. There's a form you can fill out, which I think, that's how we connected years ago or whenever we did, through Alex Ferrari. So shout out to Alex as well for having you on his podcast. And we'll probably have Franco on our podcast eventually too for more information. But this sounds so dreamy as somebody who's working toward my next, my second feature film. My first one was very, very micro budget. And I was even thinking yesterday, I think I had like literally 2 weeks barely of prep, and it was, a wing and a prayer. We were all hanging tight, trying to do our best to bring that thing to life. And we didn't even have all the money when we went in. So hearing you say things like not being ready, I mean, gosh, I want to be at the place where I have all my ducks in a row when I do my next feature. I have the plan. So before we open it up for questions, are there significant bullet points that you go, okay, a proper plan looks like what? What are the things that a filmmaker should have in that deck or on that white paper? And by the way, if you have, I think you said you had slides, you can share them at any time too, because
yeah. What I would recommend for that is if you go on my website and you click on in development, there's a bunch of decks from projects that we have in development. And so here's my thing on decks. First of all, I think the deck is critical, right? Because it is often your first impression that somebody gets of the project, right? So yeah, here they are. So you don't want anything, crappy. And so you can see we put a lot of pride in our decks. Can you open one of those?
Yeah, which one?
Open the one under this under 10th of Mercy. Yeah, that one. The Whipping Club.
Sorry. Got it.
Yeah, the Whipping Club. Because if you can open that for a second.
Sure. It's downloading as a PDF.
That's the wrong one. Yeah, that's the wrong one.
Wait, let me check. You said the what? Oh, you said under the 10th of Mercy, Whipping Club. Got it.
Yeah.
Well, this is great. So by the way, so those of you who are, with us live, I can put this in the chat too, but samacofilms.com/in-development. This is all available for free for you all to look at and download. And I think, one of the things that is a gift is to see how other people are doing it, right? See what, what information they're putting up. So I will pull this up here and I'll also put it in the chat, but here we go.
Yeah, I'm using this one specifically because I think it highlights everything. To me, this is one of my favorite decks. Okay. And believe me, I see some really bad decks. In fact, I have a folder on my computer that says bad decks, and I file them away. So yeah, you can just kind of flip through the pages and I'll kind of give you a quick summary, because this is going to answer your question. All right. So this is our lineup, right? Gary Zucker. Well, we'll get to that anyway. So we got a synopsis on the film. We try to keep everything brief. You don't want you don't want them to have to do a lot of reading. I have a writer statement from the writer, like why did I do this? I have a proposed cast. So these are the people that I intend to go out and get. I don't have any commitments yet because I don't have any money. I can't go out and make an offer until we're prepared. That's what I meant, Tony, when I said they go out too soon. I got people all day long calling agents, making offers right now, and they don't even have a nickel in the account.
Got it. So you should not be talking to agents. You should not be talking to actors.
You shouldn't be talking to anybody. Shouldn't even be talking to investors until all of the development is done. So yeah, so now we're still in cast. I mean, it shapes up to be, this could be an amazing cast all together, right? Young little girl for that role, and boys. And then this is our director, this is all his credits, or some of them. And that's me. And then that's the writer. She wrote the book first. And then now this all takes place in Ireland. So these are all Irish producers. Ireland has a great tax credit, by the way, which is one of the reasons why we go there. So these are all, and Anthony's a co-producer, is my husband. Gary Zuckerberg's the guy that did Pulp Fiction, and he's a dear friend, and he's also casting director. And these are the kind of people you want to surround yourself with, and these are the people I surround you with when you work with us, because I bring my team to the table. So this is an executive summary. So, Ireland is the location.
Here's the financial plan.
Finance plan. See, this is a combination of a lookbook and a business plan. So here's the top sheet of the budget. I can't really see what it says. 4 million, I think. Yeah. Okay. This is the top sheet of the budget. And now this is the critical one. These are your sales estimates. You have to have sales estimates. You do not get to go and sit in front of an investor and ask them for millions of dollars if you don't know the value in the international market of what your film represents. And in this case, you can see the bottom, there's 2 columns, there's usually 3, by the way, 4.9 and 11 million. So what that means is, in the worst case scenario, guess what? We're not going to lose your money. Right? Because $4 million budget. And in the best case scenario, we're going to make, we're going to make a bunch of money. Now, these are pre-sale projections. So that doesn't mean that that's all we can make. It just means that if we sold these territories at those rates, which we were quoted based on the information in this deck, then that's the number. That, to me, is the entire deal right there for an investor.
So educate us, because there's some of us on this call or watching the replay that might not know. What does it mean to pre-sell territories? What does that actually mean? Are you getting the money in a bank because they're trusting you're going to deliver it? Blah blah blah. What does that mean?
Yes and no. All right. So when you do a pre-sale, and people, pre-sales aren't as popular as they used to be, but when you do a pre-sale, I would go to one of my reps they have all the materials. They're going to go to Cannes. They're going to go to Berlin, wherever they're going to go. Repping my film, and they're going to attempt to get pre-sales. Now, by then, you should have some kind of commitment on who your actors are, or at least your director. And, if you have a director that's, a named director or a well-known or up-and-coming, that's great, because that's going to help. So, and what happens is the people that represent each of these countries, their job is to buy and sell American films. That's their job. So, if they do a good enough pitch on my film, the guy from France might say, hey, you know what? If you deliver everything you're telling me that's on this deck, I'll give you $750,000. And I'll commit to that right now. So we do that. We put a contract together for $750,000, right? Now, no, he's not going to give me $750,000, but he's going to give me a contract that's worth $750,000. And then I, Franco, am going to come back to the States, take that $750,000 contract and turn it into money. I'm going to, what we call bank it, right? I'm going to advance against the contract, because the contract has value, right? Now, imagine if I do that 3 times, if I can do 3 pre-sales, which by the way is sort of the magic number. If I can get 3 pre-sales, I can end up with $1 million of a $3 million movie just in pre-sales, right? And I can take all 3 of those pre-sale contracts, I can bundle them together as a whole, and then I can bring them in and advance against them. Now, when you advance against a pre-sale, you only receive 80% of the face value. So if it's $1 million, I'm going to get 800 in cash. And when it gets paid back, that's when they make the 20%. They get the $1 million. I get the 800, they get the $1 million, right? So pretty good deal, right? Then remember, in many cases, I'm looking to do an Irish film in Ireland and shooting a bunch of it in Newfoundland. And the reason we're going to Newfoundland is because they're in Canada. They have a Canadian tax credit, which is really big these days, right? The second thing they have is they have an incredible a currency exchange rate for the US, for the US dollar. So that's a giant benefit. And then the third thing is they actually have equity money that they invest in movies that you make in Newfoundland. So these are the kinds of things as an EP, it's my job not only to teach you that these things exist and where to go to get them and who to call, but because this is stuff I'm actively doing on a daily basis, right? With these international relationships, and they're called co-pros. So you're, co-producing, and certain countries have treaties with other countries and certain ones don't. And this is all the kind of stuff that you guys don't have to know. It's nice if you do, but you don't have to, because if you bring on somebody in my position, that person,
so good.
You're supposed to know. So, but the one more thing I just want to say about that is that, so now think about it. If I get a 40% tax credit, we're going to Buffalo, New York for one of our films, because New York just upped their tax incentive. So make sure you guys understand what that means. If it's a 40% tax credit in New York, which it is, for every $1 million I spend in Buffalo, I get 400,000 of that back. That's an incentive to go to Buffalo.
Yeah.
So when I'm talking to my investors, I'm like, look, I'm going to give you 40% back before I even make the movie.
That's great.
Right.
By the way, we have a East Bay incentive happening so the Oakland and East Bay of the SF Bay area of 25 to 30% that has just started. So if you have any films that need to be filming up in Northern California, I'd love to connect you with the people that are running that rebate. Their applications have just opened, so it's kind of cool.
All right.
Okay, before we open up for questions, so these are the final pages of the deck here. You've got some, breakdowns of how the money will be distributed once the profit starts coming in, right? Anything you want to say about these things?
Well, what I say is you have to learn. Here's the issue just in general, right? You've got creative people and then you've got business people. And a lot of the times there's one and the same. Like I consider myself a creative person, but I'm a businessman, right? Anthony, my husband's, is the creator, but he's also a businessman. So you do want that overlap, or you want to partner with somebody who's on the other side of that. But what I'm getting at is, it is, I believe, your responsibility and your obligation to you, to your films, and to your investors, that you learn how to speak investor speak.
Yeah.
And don't leave it up to them. I got guys walking up to investors and pitching elevator pitch a story and go, okay, that was it. Can I have $2 million?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's going right. And that's why what I do on these decks is I combine the beautiful aesthetics of the film and the pretty pictures and the name actors with the hardcore business stuff. I got a plan in there. I got sales projections in there. You can see the top sheet of my budget. I got nothing to hide on the business side, right? And that's what they respond to, because the whole goal of this deck, I don't expect to send this deck to somebody and have them call me and say, how much can I write you a check for? But that's not the goal. That'd be great. But the goal is to get a conversation open.
Mm-hmm.
This is a conversation starter to pique their interest enough that they go, wow, look at this thing. This looks really, really interesting. I want to talk to these guys. And then you get them on either in a room with me or on a Zoom with me. And then, we start the process of closing those funds. Because even if you have, like you had said something to me, I thought that was interesting, is that a lot of people are making the movie and they're still raising the money, right? And I do too. I mean, it happens to all of us. Obviously, the ideal scenario is to not have to do that and to have all the money before you start making the film. And so that's the direction that we tend to move in, because it protects the investor as well. But what I was going to say is, if I'm going to do a movie for $2 million and I have $500,000 in the bank, I'm going to go make an offer to that actor with my $500K.
Yeah.
Once I get the actor,
you can get more. Yeah.
Now I can go get the rest.
Well, I just a quick little thing I was observing in this. I think, as we're all listening and watching, kind of some simple takeaways too, is just doing some research on what is your film comparable to. I was listening to a podcast recently of a pitch fest. I think it was at the Austin Film Festival, and they had some pitch fest people pitching, and grace to all of us creatives. People were stepping up to the microphone with these awesome opportunities, but they didn't have people were asking them, what's your comps? They didn't have any comps. How much is the budget? I don't know, and you want to have some numbers, you want to have some things, but little things like this, like Philomena, I've seen that movie. I think it was in the Oscar conversation for a while. I might be wrong, but little things like the budget was 12 million. It made 128,000 on opening weekend. The gross was 37 million, for domestic. The gross for the world was 100. I mean, these are great numbers to look at and consider. What is your film like? What did a film that is like your film, going for in the marketplace, so you can use those type of numbers. So this is really great. Thank you for sharing these resources. Let's open it up for questions. And by the way, today, Franco said he could stay a little bit over. We'll have our official close at the top of the hour, but if you want to stay later to chat, kind of like we did last week, we'll do that as well. But who has questions? Let's bring Olga to the forefront, who's doing a feature film currently. Hello, Olga.
Hello. Hi, Franco. Hi, everyone. Again, I have a lot of questions, but I just will be respectful of everyone else's time, because there will be more from other people, I'm sure. really interesting conversation about ROI, because I come from tech and business as well. So I know the language, I kind of know where you're coming from, Franco, and it was really good information in terms of how to structure your deck and have all those projections and pre-sales and special distribution. My question is more about like, what do you typically offer in ROI to investors? If, let's say, you mentioned they give you $1 million, you say, okay, I'm going to get 800,000, I'm going to use it, but then they'll get this million back anyway. Is there anything on top you would say, okay, you'll get, 20% on top, 15%, depending on the sales deal or like your projections, or does it depend on really the project you're working on? So is there a range that you would recommend?
Okay, great question. So first of all, there is an industry standard.
Mhm.
And it is my belief that you should never deviate from that standard. What the standard is, and that's what the waterfall was, that all those blue things, is that as the revenue is coming in, now once you've made the movie, you've got a distributor and everybody's, the money's coming through. The first people to pay back are your investors, right? I mean, you've got expenses that you have to pay first, like distribution and all that. But once you net those out, then the money goes to the investors. The investor recoups what we call first position, meaning they get all the money until they're paid. So we don't make any money until they get paid. The ROI, standard industry ROI, is 20%. So you absolutely got to stick to that. I get pitch decks when they're offering 15%, and it actually angers me, because it's going against the, like, why? Like, why? Like, that's not what it is. Like, pay them. They're giving you millions of dollars. Give them their money. You got to make sure your investors become whole. You got to make them happy, and you got to protect them. The last thing you want to do is take money out of their pocket. Then once they're being recouped, what I would say 120%. So if it's $1 million, they got $1.2 million. They've got all their money back. They got their 20% back. Then it's a 50-50 split. So every dollar that the movie continues to bring in perpetuity for the rest of time, half of it goes to the investors. So that's called the upside. That's why they do it. They don't do it for the 20%, right? They're banking that you're going to make a movie for 2 million and it's going to make 10. So they're not going to just get their 2 million back. They're going to make another 2 or 3 million on top of that. And so are you, by the way, because you're the other half. You're the one who's getting that other 50%. And now, if you do that, enough times, if you do it the first time, now you got money to make your next film. And if you do it enough times, you don't need fresh, brand new investors all the time. Now, look, everybody's always going to be looking for fresh new investors all the time, because things change, markets change, everything changes. So, but in theory, like, I got one guy, we've worked 4 films. We've done 4 times, because, and this guy has nothing to do with the movie business, but he loved it. He enjoyed the process. He made his money. It took a little while, it takes a while to get the money back, but for people, for the right kind, because there's different kinds of investors, for the right kind of investor, that is definitely the way to go, and to keep things in line. Because if you were that person with the 15% deal, and then that investor gets pitched somebody else at 20, you're dead to them.
Yeah, that's never going to happen in the future. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's so helpful. It makes complete sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. We're going to bring in Gwen Gordon. Your question, Gwen. Hello.
Hi, Franco. Thank you so
Hi.
much for doing this. Everything that you say makes so much sense. I love it. It just appeals to that part of my brain. My question for you personally is, what's the difference between someone who takes your course and someone that you personally want to work with?
Wow. Okay. So there's a couple of things. The course has been it has been such a learning experience for me, because now I've been doing it for a long time now. I mean, during COVID, that's all I did, right? Because that's all anybody of us could do. And so, that's what I did. I stayed here and taught. I say that everybody should take the course, whether I work with them or not, meaning that if that relationship turns into a working relationship, great. And now we've already established ourselves, right? And what I was saying to Tony, we share a friend in Alex Ferrari, who very like-minded, wanting to help filmmakers and whatnot. And I have done several of his podcasts. And the thing is that he was interested in having me like record my class and put it up online and sell it and let people buy like each topic or something, right? And the reason I have always resisted that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it, I think it's great for filmmakers because it's the most cost-effective way, I think, to learn. But for me, the reason I do these one-on-ones for 6 weeks, it's an hour and a half a week for 6 weeks, is because number one, we really get to know each other, right? And it's a personal relationship now. And while we're doing that, I'm really getting into your head around your project. I'd have read the script if you have one, and we're already starting to kind of contemplate the future of how this thing would go. And so everything is in relationship to you and your project, right? I mean, you can't get that from hitting, play, right? Not to mention the fact, if you guys are familiar with Stage 32, I did like 5 or 6 of those whatever they call it, yeah. But they were like 7 years ago now, and people still call me. Because they republish, and I still get these emails from these people say, "I saw you on Stage 32." I'm like, Stage 32? That was wasn't that like the 90s? No, I'm just kidding. Mm-hmm. But anyway, my point is, a lot of that stuff is no longer relevant, right? So for me, having it up like that, this industry changes so quickly. And one of the benefits to doing the one-on-ones is that, like, I'm doing a film with a Stan Lee film with my international co-partners right now called Werewolf. And I have an Australian thing going on. I got films all over the place because as an EP, remember, I don't have to be there. I can have 4 films shooting in different parts of the world at the same time. I'm not the one that started today, or whatever. So I don't need to be. In fact, you don't want me to be there. I'm better off here wheeling and dealing and getting your money for your next one, right? So that's how I feel like there's more value there, because when we're having a conversation, and it happens all the time. I have an investor in Australia, for example. We're working on a 3-picture deal. Well, every time I speak to her, right, something shifts in the right direction. Every time I get on the call with my filmmaker client, and we didn't speak since last Tuesday, I can give her the update and go, "You're not going to believe what happened on the call." And you can actually hear play-by-play me doing, in the room, but you can hear the real-time information of the current situation of what's happening, not just in my career, but in filmmaking in general. So you're not getting old, obsolete information. As far as the other side of that is, you'd have to be willing to enroll in the development program. Now, because that's how we end up actually working together on a project. Now, I will say this just to save everybody a lot of trouble. I have two, I call them brochures, I don't know, for lack of a better word. And I'm happy to send them to anybody who requests them. One of them is on the class. And I haven't told Tony yet, but I put a special little nugget in there for anybody from BraveMaker. So I got one on the class. It gives you a complete breakdown of what the class is and the curriculum. And then I have one on the development program. That's another whole level, because at that point, there is an investment involved there. But I will say this, that investment is bringing, I come on as a consulting producer initially. And then I bring my entire team. I call it the 7 critical people. They all come in. And I'm talking about casting directors and salespeople and lawyers, and because you got to do this stuff right. If you don't know how to raise $2 million legally and abide by SEC regulations, you can get in trouble.
Yeah.
So
that's a really good point that we don't often talk about. There are investment rules that, if you don't understand them, could get you in trouble. Yeah.
And but a lot of the time it's just out of sheer ignorance. They just don't know that. That's why I do this. It's like, you can't just go get everybody to give you money and put it in an account and go make a movie. You can if you're going to make a $5,000 short, or if you're going to make a $20,000 feature. But if you're in the $1 to $6 million, you can go to jail.
Yeah.
For that stuff. And you have to know the documents, and we have all that. It's all part of the deal. If you do a development deal with us, you don't have to worry about any of that. We bring all that to you. Now, I will say this about development money, because development money varies. And again, I'm going to send you the stuff. Every dollar that's spent in development, and I think we're the only ones who do this. I don't know. I might be wrong. But every dollar that's spent in development money on your project is reimbursed, right? Plus 20%. So, and it comes out of the budget. So what we do is we add a line item in the budget, above the line budget, for whatever you spent, doesn't matter. And we add 20%. And when that budget gets finalized and closed, that money goes back. So you're literally investing in in getting your project off the ground. Now, is there a risk? There's always a risk, right? The risk is, if for any reason you're unable to get the funding for the film, there's no way to get your money back from, right? But the other thing that's happened before is, we might get adventurous and go out trying to get $3.5 million for a project. And when all is said and done, we end up with $2.5 million, but we can still make it, and we can still make it as well as we had intended. And you're still going to get your money back, right? So it's not like an all or nothing. It just might not be what our original goal was to set. And I just want to say one more thing. I have this thing, and I don't know, I'm almost embarrassed saying it, but I say there's good people with bad projects. And then there's bad people with good projects. And then there's good people with good projects. Okay, so those are the ones I want. But having said that, the good people with bad projects, many of whom are writer-directors, they got other projects. If the project isn't working, or if it's just not the right thing to go into development with, then don't do it. Let's not do it. And part of my process, and I do this all the time, once I get started with somebody, they'll have one project in mind, but then they'll send me 4. And I can assess those 4 to try to figure out which is the lowest hanging fruit for you for now. If this is going to be your first one, let's work on this one, because I know you really want to work on this one, but this one we should put over here for number 3. Because if you can get number 1 made, financed, made well, distributed, and get distribution, right? And get and have the money come back. If you can do that, you're good. Right? Now you have what I consider street cred. Right? Because now you're, one of us, and people are going to start paying more attention to you because, and it doesn't have to be a big smash success. It just has to get done. And it has to get done right. I had a woman many years ago. I actually ended up making a movie with her, but when she had come to me, she had done 3 films for $350,000 a piece, and which pretty okay. They had all the stuff, and they did a good job. That all 3 films kind of like, one place and all that, small cast, and it was well done. She's a director and she's a good writer, and it was great. So she comes to me. She's like, I want to go higher. I want to do $1.5 million. So I got, great, let's get into it. Because I'm thinking, this is great. I got this woman, she's experienced, she's got 3 films behind her. That's great. Until I realized, and again, this is part of my own learning curve, when I was out pitching for investment money, the investor was also a distributor. So they were going to put, in those days, they were going to put money up. They were very interested in it. And they said to me, okay, well, why don't you get me the background on how those other 3 films did, the 350 ones. I said, okay. Well, what it turns out, lo and behold, none of them have ever gotten distribution. So she made $1 million worth of films that are literally sitting on a shelf in her living room. So, but on the one hand, I can look and I go, this is great. She's got experience. She knows what she's doing. But I have to sell you. I'm selling you. If you're the filmmaker, if you own the script and you own the property, it's yours. It's not mine. I'm a hired hand just to get you through. I'm the coach. You're the player. And if I'm trying to sell you, and I was embarrassed, to be honest with you, and because I was embarrassed because of myself, because I didn't know enough back then to have figured that out myself. Because if I had known that, I'm not saying I even would have done anything differently, but my strategy would have been different. I would have gone in a different way if I had known. But now I got egg on my face because I'm assuming that that these films were out there, and they never were. So, and the irony of all of this is that 4th film that I did help with, we made it for $350,000. Because that was the comfort level. Now, the good news is that film worked, and it got distribution, and it got her on the map, and they did all the things. So I guess you could look at it like, she spent $1.3 million to make a $350,000 film that eventually got her to where she wanted to go. But, lesson learned. Anyway.
So we're at time. I know we're going to have one more question for Kelly, but I'm going to put on the screen. This is where you can connect with Franco and put your information in there. And he'll get back to you for that consult. But if you want to stay around, Franco is going to do a little more time with us. Thank you, Gwen, for the question. Kelly, come on up. And if you have to go, we understand. If you want to stick around, please continue to hang out. We'll probably do another 15-ish minutes. Kelly White.
Sounds good.
Hi, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. I actually have two questions if I'm allowed. One
Sure.
of them is it's such the chicken and the egg. Like you need money to get cast and make offers, and you need cast to get investors. How? Like, what do you do first? Where do you go with it? Um,
Yeah.
right in that phase on two films. So
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. It's an age-old problem. It's been with us forever, right? And there is a way. There is a way to crack that code. I will tell you this. Sorry, Buckle. If the whole thing we talked about earlier about what people do now and say for the last 5 years is this whole step up thing where, because look, at the end of the day, if I had my way, I would get one person to write me one check. I go make my movie, end of story, everybody happy. But that just isn't real anymore. It's just very unlikely that that's going to happen. So, raising 30% is a key, because if you can raise 30%, then you can bounce off of that 30%. And as we said earlier, bring it to an actor or a director. And if you're not directing, then you would want to go to a director first, because if we can secure a director, the director can secure talent for us because they have those resources. They can pick up the phone, right? If I end up doing a movie now with Jeremy Piven because his movie's called The Performance. You saw it. You should definitely see it. It's amazing. But anyway, if I make a movie with Jeremy, and I don't have all the money in the bank for whatever the project is, I got Jeremy. He's money in the bank. You know what I mean? But in the meantime, I theoretically could go to somebody like a Jeremy Piven and say, listen, the movie's $1.5 million, and I got $500,000 in the bank, right? And so that you explain that to your potential investors that you need, because remember, you don't need all this money in equity. You bring me in, I'm going to bring you the tax credit funds.
yes, I have that. I have tax credits already.
Well, everybody has tax credits. My grandmother has tax credits.
Yeah, I know. I got them approved, but then it's like, okay, now we got to get the rest.
That's what I'm saying. That's putting the cart before the horse. What I'd rather see you do is focus on the equity, because the equity is what triggers all those other things. Once you have 30% in equity, you can get all that other stuff in your sleep, right? You can get all that other stuff. One other thing I do not want to not mention on this call, because it's giant for me right now, is product integration. I have a new deal with one of the best companies out there, and they have 120 clients. I told you that I was working on Werewolf, a Stan Lee movie. It's a $25 million film. So we're getting ready to submit for that. And what they'll do is they'll do a match to see how many of their clients match up with the script. And then we could get as much as 7 figures out of product integration money. And I can get as little as 350,000, which is what I'm looking for on one of them. And I can get as much as $1.2 million, right? But depending on who's in it and blah, 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 who's distributing it. But my point is, that's free money. We call it gap money because it closes that gap of what you're missing between your equity and all your tax credits and stuff, right? And then you get this free money and you don't have to pay it back. And so it's going to put you in a position to be able to pay your investors back sooner. Because there's that debt piece it's not debt, it's free, right? So I hope I answered your question.
My other question was percentage of do you have kind of a template or a goal with debt financing, foreign sales, investors, and tax credits? Do you have a target of you want a third of it with this and 20? Do you have a
yes and no, because it does kind of change with the project, I think. Okay. I mean, for example, if you shoot here in LA, the tax credit here is like the worst. So I although we always do try to submit, we don't count on it. And now I have a whole new strategy I have to employ, because that piece, whatever it's 20, 25, 30, 40, I can't use.
Right.
And that's a detriment. Now, I can look at the flip side of that, which is that the talent, a lot of the talent lives here, and that the money I'm saving, I'm saving, I could, that's going to maybe be a benefit to me. And a lot of the talent would prefer not to travel. They'd rather take an Uber to set than an airplane, right? And so you got to kind of weigh the pros and cons. But just in general, I would say I would not attempt to package a film unless there was a minimum of 30% in cash equity in the bank. And that's a whole class in itself, right? About what that means. And then you put in that reasonable factor of a tax credit, right, at least at the beginning, because we don't know where we're going to shoot it. We can shoot it anywhere. Maybe we come to you at 25% in, Tony, in your land. So right now at the beginning, that's just kind of a place marker, right? So I got 30 and I got 25. So I got 55% there. And then the rest of it, I'm either going to go and do a couple of those pre-sales. I might ask the distributor for a minimum guarantee, which is another whole chapter. And I can monetize that. Any kind of a contract that's a legitimate contract from a legitimate company, we can monetize it at 80% of face value. So if they give you a minimum guarantee for X, we can give you 80% of X. So we can fill in the blanks with that. Then you have actual gap financing, which means you're going to an investor for that last piece, but that's very expensive and you want to stay away from that because they're going to want more than 20%. So that's why I rely on my product placement, product integration company, because they can fill in that same piece for free. So that's just kind of a little map. And it shifts. I mean, sometimes I only have 25% in equity and I got to make up that other 5% somewhere else. But then sometimes I get a 40% tax credit instead of 30, and now I'm ahead of the game. So that's the general kind of outlook. You're welcome.
Franco, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Everybody who's on the call, please, follow Franco and Samako Films, and we'll probably see him again at the film festival. Let's hope some of you get to make some connections and get your feature films off the ground. And I think this is, again, one of the reasons why we do these things is for the relationships. And sometimes it takes years upon years to build these things in. So, this is a touch point, and then, we see him again, So yeah, Franco, any parting words you want to say before we log off?
Well, just to your point, this is the long game, right? Yep. I get these people that they go, what's taking so long? I'm like, it's been 4 months. I got films I'm still working on from 2 years ago. You know what I mean? So you really have to be willing to play the long game. And that's what I've always done, because as I told you in my story, I got here late in life. And many of the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis are people I've known for 20 years, including my team, right? So it's about that, about building your team and being willing to play the long game. But the biggest word for me is commitment, because I say to my filmmakers, I can't care more about your film than you do.
That's right.
Right. So if you're not committed, you can't expect me to be, right? Yep. If you're committed, I'm all in. I'll give you everything I got. And that's what the course is. The course is literally everything I know in 6 weeks, right? So that would be my sort of parting words. And like I said, I know you got my contact information. Please send me an email. I'll be happy to send you guys those. Even if it's something you look at later, you should take a look and see what we got going on over here. And hopefully I may work with some of you, on some of the people who aren't even on this call, that we're going to come back on the replay. And so hi to you guys, whoever you are. And yeah, and Tony, anytime, man. This is great. First of all, I just want to say I love what you're doing. I did a good deep dive on your company and on you, and it's very, very, very inspirational. I'm so grateful that there's people like you out there that are doing this, because you know what, we all need it. We all need help, and we need resources. It's the biggest problem in this business is access. You don't have access. And in my case, it's access to money, but in other people's and distribution, in other people's, it's access to resources and relationships. And this is absolutely a very cool organization. So thank you so much for inviting me and for including me into your little circle of love.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. That's what we want to be about. And we like to end with a little photo. So everybody look into the camera, give us your best cheesy for first Monday of December. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Yay. Awesome. Franco Sama, you're awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll be in touch.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye, you guys. Have a great week. Happy December. Make those movies. Brave stories change the world. You are the story.